Um, Today's event is, I guess, the culmination of a project to establish a nutrient sustainability platform on the island of Ireland, and we're very excited to be at this point. Throughout the morning, we hope that those of you who are members will enjoy the activation and the formal launch of the platform, and those of you that are potential members will get a flavour of what the platform is about and what it hopes to achieve going forward. Just to mention a little bit of background of where the platform has come from. The Environmental Protection Agency funded a project led by myself, Vincent O'Flaherty from NUIG Galway, and my colleague John McGrath from Queen's University in Belfast, through a funding call under the auspices of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And essentially, the project was designed to establish the feasibility of the launch of a nutrient platform as a not-for-profit organization on the island of Ireland that would ultimately be member-led and driven. And so the role of John and myself is essentially as facilitators of that feasibility study period. And that period will finish today with the formal launch of the platform. There was a founders members event after a whole series of engagements with various stakeholders from various industry sectors. A founders day was held a year ago now. There were 26 organizations represented on the day. And at that point, the terms of reference and the governance structures for the new platform was agreed. In terms of what the platform seeks to do, it's a not-for-profit organization, as I mentioned, that seeks to develop nutrient sustainability in the context of a circular economy on the island of Ireland. Membership benefits for those members is around the support from the platform for the creation of networking and new business opportunities and value chains and indeed income streams. That the platform would act as a forum where there's a safe space for various stakeholders to interact with each other and with regulatory agencies to discuss policy, challenges and solutions in the area of nutrient sustainability. And that network would then ideally extend, as we'll hear this morning, into the international realm and engage with national and international technology providers and sustainability initiatives and government bodies, EU agencies, etc. That networking would be enabled by the platform acting to arrange a series of events, networking events and workshops, providing research and development support and technology transfer to address some of the challenges that members have identified, and also by creating that forum that members would be able to come together and agree common positions and identify common challenges that the platform could work to address through an advocacy role. In terms of the agenda for today, you'll see that we've had a couple of speakers and a platform discussion lined up. From an attendee point of view, to participate, we'd invite you to please use the chat function. And when you click on the chat function, you'll see that you'll have the opportunity to send your query or your question or your comment to all panelists or all panelists and attendees. And we'd request, please, that you can use the all panelists and attendees function to address any questions and comments that you'd like the panel to consider at the end of the event. You can also use the chat opportunity to interact with each other, of course. This is after all, a networking event, and a good platform is characterized by good networking. So please feel free to use that function. We plan to record the chat functions, the chat that takes place during the webinar this morning, and we plan to use that essentially to follow up with you if there are any membership queries that arise during the day, and we'll follow up with you individually, and also to follow up with you on any questions and comments you might have if we can't get to those during the course of this morning's webinar. So John, my colleague John will be moderating those, and we'll try and get as many of those questions and comments to the panel for you, and hopefully you get a good a good feedback on your participation. And I said we welcome, the memberships are open, and we welcome queries and comments and anything that you have in terms of the platform's plans and operations. We'll follow up with you individually on those if we don't cover it this morning. The presentations from this morning will also be recorded and available in the members area of the platform website. Okay, so without further ado, I might move on and introduce our first speaker this morning. We're delighted to be joined by Chris Thornton, who's manager of the European Sustainable Phosphorus Platform. Chris has been working in the area of phosphate and phosphate industry for many years in areas as diverse as nutrient recycling, fertilizers, phosphorus in food and diet, and various industrial applications. And in his role as manager of the European Sustainable Phosphorus Platform, he has a very strong experience since 2013 of how a good nutrient platform should operate. And we're delighted that he's going to talk to us about that topic this morning. So thanks very much, everybody. And thanks very much, Chris. The floor is yours.
Okay, can you see my slides?
We can indeed.
Good, okay, because predictably I can't, but that's how this seems to always work in Zoom. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm on the program to talk about what is a good platform. I don't think I'm competent to do that. What I can talk about is how the platforms which exist do function. Also some cases of platforms which tried to start and then stopped, and there's maybe experience to learn from there. But I think also Vincent, to a significant extent, in presenting the outlines that you've already agreed for the Island of Ireland platform, it corresponds to very much what a good platform will look like, working on networking, business opportunities, and dialogue with regulators. So maybe if the slides would actually move. Yes. Have you got the second slide?
Yes, we do.
Good, cool, so it's working. So ESPP, as you said, was set up in 2013. With the wide objective of moving phosphorus sustainability and phosphorus recycling forward in Europe. And we're brought together at the time by a combination of, particularly the government, who were very active, a number of water companies who were particularly interested in phosphorus recycling, companies involved in recycling technologies, and progressively we've widened to a number of actors in different areas. What is the European platform? We are a coalition for action, is how we define ourselves. So maybe three things. Firstly, we have a wide objective. We are a phosphorus platform, not a nutrient platform. Not a nitrogen platform. The reason for that is simply that there are other existing structures in Europe which deal with nitrogen. There isn't another European structure which deals with phosphorus, and we didn't wish to kind of interfere and stand on the toes of other organizations. But in many countries, in some countries there are phosphorus platforms, in some countries there are nutrient platforms, and I think that depends on the local context and challenges. There isn't particularly a good solution or a bad solution. We bring together, as I said, a wide range of different actors, mainly companies. Around 3/4 of our budget, 2/3 of our budget comes from company membership, with companies in waste industries, in fertilizers, both in mineral and organic, in phosphorus cycling technologies, in the chemical industry. But we also have paying members who are national governments, regional governments, cities, and knowledge institutes, often through research projects where we can provide dissemination of results, and so membership can be included in the project budget under dissemination. What are our actions? We work on vision and awareness. So as Vincent said, dialogue to work on common positions, common understanding, networking and stakeholders, bringing people together, dissemination of information, and very actively dialogue with regulators, mainly at the European level because we're a European organization, and talking to the European Commission to try and improve and move forward policy and regulations. An example of one of the things we do is to communicate success stories. We have about 50. I've chosen one which is from near where I live in France because I particularly like it. Set up now 3 years ago, a little company making organic fertilizer out of cattle manure, which is matured for 9 months like a great cheese. And that sums up very much the French approach to life. There are a number of other nutrient platforms functioning across Europe. So ESPP at European level. Historically, the Netherlands platform, which existed before the European platform did. Germany has a phosphorus platform operational since 2015. And we work with some partner platforms, in particular in the Baltic Sea Action Group, for which nutrients is a major challenge. And there are a number of phosphorus or nutrient platform projects under development across Europe at different stages of realization. Probably the two which are closest to actually becoming functioning platforms are Ireland and Italy, but there are also projects in the Czech Republic, Switzerland. There's a small active platform now in Sweden, and there's also discussion underway in other countries. We also have close contacts with nutrient platforms worldwide because, of course, the phosphorus challenge is very similar across the world. The technologies are very similar. There is now an active platform in North America, the Sustainable Phosphorus Alliance, with whom we work closely on a number of things. There's a hub in Canada. There's an active platform in Japan, working very much on industrial recycling. And we also work with UNEP, the Global Partnership for Nutrient Management. There are other types of nutrient networks which it's worth mentioning. SERA 17 in the US, for instance, which has been around now for nearly 30 years, is an informal network working on phosphorus management in agriculture. There's a somewhat similar network in France, the COMIFER, which is a French National Committee on Rational Fertilization, and there are a number of other similar structures. They're different, but they're organizations we work closely with. How do we function? I think maybe the first and most important thing is we function by consensus. We do have a formal structure with voting rights and so on because we are set up as a not-for-profit association, but we've never formally have to vote to decide something. We've always succeeded in finding consensus between our different members. And one of the important actions that we carry out is to try to bring together different industries to put forward joint positions. So this is an example of a joint position on the EU Fertilizing Products Regulation, the new EU Fertilizing Regulation, when it was still going through the decision process in the European Parliament. And this was the first time that industries signed a joint position involving industries, fertilizer industries, both organic and mineral. The first time they'd ever talked together, because before that they didn't have a regulation that they shared. So there was no real reason to talk to one another. And also bringing together the water industry, Euro. So a range of industries coming together to a joint position to try and push a proposed regulation to make it effectively more operational and more likely to help recycling. When we've talked to our members, the most important aspect they see in our platform and the value for money in their membership is networking. And we're very active in information and networking at two levels. Firstly, wide information towards the public. We have an emailing list of over 40,000 contacts with a respectably high opening rate compared to other emailings with large sendings. We also work with meetings and webinars, and of course that's now significantly challenged with the current COVID situation, and we've had to adapt to that. But we also, the network is very much made up of personal contacts, the Outlook list. If people have a question or a technical issue, we can often find someone else who can maybe help them deal with it. And that's not easy to manage. We don't really manage it with a sensible tool. One day maybe we will. It's managed much through personal knowledge of our members, of who they know. So I don't necessarily know the right person, or our president doesn't, or our board doesn't, but we can contact someone within our membership or network who can then contact someone else. We're very engaged, as I said, with policy making. This is a list of the many European policies which involve phosphorus and with which we engage with more or less success. Also I've put in the boxes a number of things which have changed over the last 5 years. I'm not at all claiming that these changes are the unique result of our action, but maybe we've been a part of it. What is clear is that phosphorus is very much more recognized in European policy now than it was 10 years ago, which is positive, and we're involved in taking those things forward. So the EU fertilizers regulation, a very important development. Water policy and the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive and the EU Sludge Directive are both currently open to revision or update, under discussion, but also more precise areas such as European standards with SEN, or organic farming, which is a potentially important market for recycled phosphorus because there can be a higher added value. And another important area is research and demonstration, where important funding has been orientated into nutrient management and nutrient recycling and biofertilizers in Horizon 2020, and also in LIFE and Interreg, and we expect also significant funding in Horizon Europe. And at the same time, developments in national legislation, where we work essentially to support the national platforms who are directly in contact with their national government. One of the areas we're active is trying to communicate science to decision makers through our two tools, one of which is our monthly newsletter, providing kind of short information, summarizing projects or developments or new commercial products. And the other tool we use is the Scope newsletter, which has been around a long time, which we kind of inherited from industry and have taken forward, which presents more in-depth scientific presentations. And one of the most recent ones was on nutrients and climate change and aquatic methane emissions, which are actually a significant contributor to climate change, how they're impacted by nutrients and by nutrient management. And we're currently preparing a special edition on eutrophication and land runoff and how that's impacted by climate change, and how that will also bring together the challenges of nutrients and phosphorus and climate change. Actually function, we're established as a not-for-profit association, and that's important for transparency, for clarity of decision making, representation and so on. Our statutes are public. We have an EU transparency register and listing and so on. And importantly, we are 100% membership funded. We see that as a key to our credibility and our independence. That doesn't mean we don't receive any public funding, because some of our members are national governments or cities, so that's public money, and some of our members, as I indicated, are research projects where effectively the membership is part of their dissemination budget. In exchange for the membership, we communicate about the project, about its outcomes. But we don't have any direct public funding for which we have to submit grants and so on. And that also means that we're functioning in a long-term basis and not on a kind of 3-year public funding research project cycle. The objectives that we share with many of the other nutrient platforms are phosphorus sustainability, trying to have a shared vision, networking, dialogue, support for our members' actions, communication of our members' projects and so on, looking at policies, and the priorities between these different objectives vary somewhat between the different platforms. Maybe rapidly some lessons from the past. So this is some platforms which kind of started but then didn't happen. Flanders had a very active nutrient platform at the time that ESPP, the European platform, was established. The financial model involved free membership, which meant that the members didn't bring any funding to the platform. It was entirely funded by government funding. There were some issues which with governance and decision making which may have been related to that. And the result of that was when the government decided it was no longer a financial priority to fund the platform, well, the platform simply disappeared. France has talked about setting up a platform. We organized a meeting. In the end, there are other structures which exist, and it was decided that a kind of formal platform was not appropriate, but people continue to talk to one another, and there's significant interest. But in the end, in France, it was decided it wasn't really necessary to have a platform. The UK funding of a platform was included in an EU Interreg project, and 3 meetings were funded with a total of 200 participants. But it's one of the problems of R&D funding. That was a kind of 3-year funding recycle, and then at the end of the funding cycle, at the end of 3 years, well, it just kind of disappeared. And there are other things being talked about in Norway, in Spain, in the Baltic. Maybe just important to mention that in the UK, as a British citizen still, but living in France, I'm aware that there is a Brexit underway, and I think that probably is contributing to more interest in the UK through organizations like ourselves, because the UK will no longer have a direct access to European decision making, but at the same time, in many ways, will continue to be affected by it. So UCWIA, which is the UK Water Industry Joint Association, has this year agreed and become a member of ESPP, which is good news. Lessons for the future: the importance of networking. Vincent already mentioned this. I think it's very important. And obviously COVID does pose major challenges to this, as we all know. Funding, I've mentioned our funding model, which is by membership, but other funding models are very possible. It depends to a large extent what budget you need. But it may be possible to have a kind of lighter network run by volunteers, and Sierra 17 in the US is an example of that, but that does very much limit what you can do. Project type funding tends to function in cycles and be start and stop. So the funding model can be different, and different platforms do indeed function with different funding methods. Just to conclude, I think, and the island project is going very much as I see it in this direction. Define what you really want to do, what you really need to do, what organizations really want in terms of a platform. And then as a second important aspect, look which organizations are ready to pay for it. Because in the end, there are lots of things that we would like to do. Some of the things the ESPP manages to do, the European platform, we feel are very important, like the work we're doing on climate change and nutrients, but actually probably no one would be ready to pay for it. Fortunately, we're able to pay for it out of our membership because we're doing other things. So what are organizations ready to pay for, and then defining a budget which enables to actually respond to that, because the challenge with phosphorus and with nutrients is there are a huge amount going on, and so there's a potentially kind of infinite amount of things to do which are interesting and worthwhile. So how to define which to actually take forward. So I hope that's useful. Here again are our members, and you can see the range of different members we have, and that slide is progressively growing, which makes it more and more difficult for me to fit it all on one page. But beyond the layout problem, that's a positive news and good news. There is increasing and ongoing interest in phosphorus management. So I'm very much open to questions, either through the chat, which I haven't been reading, but which I will read when I've stopped talking, or direct online or afterwards. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Chris. As for those attendees who've joined us along the way, you're welcome. And just to reiterate what Chris has indicated there, we are using the chat function to take your questions and comments, both around the platform, the Irish Nutrient Sustainability Platform, and membership queries and so on, and also issues that you might want to raise with Chris and colleagues during the panel discussion later. So we'll look at that chat, we'll moderate that, and we'll try and cover as many of the common topics raised as possible. But in addition, we will record that chat, and we will follow up with any individual queries you might have along the way.
Just on the chat, it's important that you send messages. The default thing is to all panelists, but please select to send to all panelists and participants. I may have got the vocabulary wrong because my version is in French.
Yeah, it's all panelists and attendees. So
all panelists and attendees. Yeah.
Yeah. So then everybody can have a chance to. So please do use that. We'd appreciate your interaction with us. Okay, thanks very much again, Chris. Very, very useful. Nice scene setter on the progress on the European platform, and I think it's you know, the areas of influence are very, very significant. I think we'll move on.